Welcome, everybody. This is the 16th episode of the Don't Sing podcast. Today I have Dr. Suli. She's a multitude of things, but what she does, first and foremost, is she's a coach for men specifically. She dives in a couple different arenas when it comes to um, men's mental health and also just preparing people for having a healthy approach to life and their relationships and the pursuits. So I'm gonna let her kind of explain where she's from and how growing up, what influences led you on this path.
Okay, so hi, thank you very much for inviting me onto your podcast. I'm really happy to be here today, Noah.
Likewise.
Um, so I'm a men's coach, and I help men with their mental health, with their silent struggles, and encourage them to harness their healthy masculinity to thrive in life, love, and work. Um, so what led me to this is a lot of life experiences, really, and growing up, I, I was one of two Chinese families in a very white middle class town in the middle of
Mm,
England. So obviously there were challenges with that growing up in that sort of environment. And I don't think I really found myself until I was at university. There was kind of glimmers of like who I really was as a person. And then there've been a few challenges throughout my life since then. And then I sort of hit a spiritual awakening kind of in my early 30s. And now I've been traveling that path. And through that, it's led me to become more connected with my purpose in that I believe that I'm here to help people, men especially, because I'm a single mom to two boys. So
mhm.
that's really helped me kind of identify that's what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to support men with their silent struggles and with their mental health and just connect more with themselves.
Yeah.
So that's me and what led me here.
Um, the big question I have is um, why men specifically?
Why am I?
Because a lot of people might say, well, why doesn't she coach women? Why doesn't she give insights to women? Why do she think men need so much help and insight?
Yeah, yeah. I understand that question. I do get that question quite a lot. And in all honesty, I think it's because women have a lot of support already. Yes, women
Hmm.
have been oppressed for generations, and they have their own struggles, but it's so well documented, popularized, and discussed in the media, in
Hmm.
research. And men are sort of because they've had a certain type of privilege throughout the generations, they're assumed to be okay. And they've been conditioned in a certain way, so they don't speak about their feelings. So we don't actually know that they're struggling. Um,
Hmm.
but actually, they are. The statistics on mental health are shocking in terms of male mental health. They have the highest rate of suicide in, like, the 50s. I think it's the largest, biggest cause of death in men over like 45. And in the
Wow.
UK, one man dies every minute around the world through suicide, like by suicide. So
Mm,
men's mental health is in a really shocking state. Um, and I don't believe that there's a lot of support for men generally out there.
mhm.
There's a lot of support in terms of like leadership, productivity, that kind of thing, but nothing to connect
Yeah.
them with their emotions. And a lot of therapies, such as talking therapies and things, they're very much geared towards women. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
support out there for women. For example, when I look for networking events or when I look for like business support, there's a lot of like mompreneur mentors and like women only business networking events. And support for working mothers. And there's nothing for men
Yeah.
really. And I think obviously I have that unique perspective in that I can support men with a female perspective as well, because a lot of
Mhm.
men are in partnerships where they don't want to burden their spouses with their issues, or maybe they can talk with their partner about things, but they don't have an objective view of things, or maybe their female partner can't help them. So I believe that I can really support men from an objective point of view and with a feminine lens so that they can understand
Yes.
things from a female perspective. And and I think there are a lot of men who are men's coaches as well. But I think
Yes.
in some aspects you can be more vulnerable with other men, but then there can
Hmm.
often be like a sense of bravado or machoism with another guy, or they
Yeah.
can be very like men's circles are all about breath work and physicality, which is great in one aspect, but then
Hmm.
men traditionally they don't connect very well in terms of emotions. So if
Yeah.
I can at least support a man to find that in himself first, and then maybe he can gain more from being in a men's circle or a men's coach. It's just giving that option to men. There's a
Yeah.
female coach out there who works specifically with men, who really believes in, I'm not obviously saying that there's anything wrong with men or that they've done anything wrong. I actually really love men. I really believe in healthy masculinity. And I think that's something
Hmm.
that's kind of conditioned out of people for years now, for
Yeah.
generations. People are told being masculine is a bad thing, or standing up for yourself is a bad thing, like toxic masculinity, or like if you approach a woman in a bar, like you're being really creepy. But actually,
Yeah.
that's not the case. And having a female say that to you, like I'd love it if a man came up to me in a bar. That gives you that permission that it's not just some guy saying that. Like from a
Yeah.
woman perspective, like you believe you trust her a bit more.
Yeah, I believe what you're doing is very important. I think that the female lens is a very key aspect to it because emotions are something that women are very in tune with overall. It's something that they're not very afraid to show, and that being vulnerable is something that women do on a day to day basis. It's not something taboo for them to do. It's a way of life for them. It's the way they communicate. And I think, like you said, having healthy masculinity is in part being vulnerable and being in tune with your emotions, which especially the generations of men that are growing up in my age bracket, like early 20s, are having a hard time to come to grips with because they want to seem manly and they don't want their manhood to be belittled by being vulnerable. But I believe being more in tune with your vulnerabilities and emotions doesn't take anything away from your masculinity, or it may, in fact, even enhance it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, can you kind of speak of um, what true healthy masculinity is and looks like? Because we've been taught something growing up that is very black and white and not very nuanced at all.
Mm. Yeah, I think the stereotype is that a man just takes everything on the chin, and
Mm,
he just keeps going, and he's
right.
there to protect and to provide, to be like logistical and to be practical, but
Mm,
and not to connect with his emotions. Yes, you have been conditioned to believe that emotions are a weakness. Showing vulnerability is a weakness, but actually, I
yeah.
would argue that the strongest man in the room is the one who can show his vulnerability and own it, the one who can just
Yeah.
communicate that and own his vulnerability and stand strong and firm, saying that this is the emotions that I feel, and I can regulate myself and manage that because I know that's my stuff. I'm not going to project onto
Yeah.
other people, and I know that it's actually okay. I am still a human being. At the end of the day, emotions are not feminine or masculine. It's just being human, Or
Yeah.
there are so many. There's such a spectrum of emotions that everybody feels, and
Yeah.
men should be allowed to feel those feelings as well. They shouldn't be shamed or knocked back or suppressed from feeling very human emotions.
Yeah.
So healthy masculinity looks like someone who's connected. Their head and their heart is connected. So it's not just about the head; they're also connected with their heart. They can listen to their
Mm,
intuition. They have meaningful direction. They know where they're going, and
right.
they'll look after their kingdom, whether that's your business, your family, your vision for life, and they're connected with their soul's purpose, and they can communicate
Yeah.
that without fear, and they can own
Yeah.
themselves with confidence and self assurance.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, I like that term you used. Being in tune with their soul without fear is very important because I think a lot of men, including myself in the past, have definitely put on a more colder, um, you know, more bravado like mask on to try to, you know, tell people, oh, I don't let things get to me. I'm very stoic. I don't really my emotions don't fluctuate that much. I'm just a stone cold individual that only focus on the practical, and I don't think that's pretty robotic way of going about life. I mean, life is about emotions and connection, and it becomes very hard to foster that when you approach life that way. And like you spoke on earlier with men's mental health and suicides, I believe that has to do a lot with loneliness
Mm.
and a deep sense of not belonging. And I think that loneliness may come from not being able to be in touch with your real self or being too afraid to be your real self, feeling like your real authentic self doesn't have a place. And I think the more men are more open to, you know, being themselves unapologetically and not always looking to the next man to see how I compare and how I stack up is very important because there's billions of humans and none of us are alike. None of us are the same. That's why what makes you an individual. So
Mhm.
I think it's very important to point out the the fear aspect of it. There's so much trepidation behind um, being your authentic self, and I think everyone's authentic self is has a like you said a spectrum of emotions that they can convey. Um, what are some healthy practices men can do to kind of come back to themselves and take off that mask
Mm.
and be okay with it?
Yeah, I think you're right, and that a lot of it's to do with loneliness. It's in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. One of the basic things after like food, shelter, warmth, is
Mm,
belonging. That feeling of belonging is one of the absolute basic building blocks in the hierarchy of needs. Um, I mean, that's one model, but I believe it's very true. So
hmm
if you don't have that connection with other people and that sense of belonging, you're more likely to feel isolated and you won't
Yeah,
fulfill your higher purpose because you're too busy kind of in survival and like just getting on. So, to connect back with yourselves and to be more authentic, it starts with yourself, kind of
yes,
being vulnerable with yourself, you know.
hmm
Um, so getting to know yourself better and
yeah,
sitting with yourself. So I know it sounds very cliche, like do the journaling, do the meditations,
yeah,
have cold water therapy, so have a cold shower every day to kind of like expand your level of discomfort and being okay with discomfort. So you can override your thinking brain and be in
hmm
your emotions more. Um,
yeah,
those are all cliches for a reason because they do connect you back more with yourself. And I
yes,
think it's kind of I think a lot of it's to do with tackling all of the conditioning that you've been brought up with as well since childhood, whether that's your immediate familial environment or whether that's like the messages you've been getting through the media as you've been growing up, and just unpacking all of that and thinking, like, is that truly me though, or is that something that someone's told me once upon a time that that's what I'm meant to be?
right, right,
Who am I underneath all of that? And once you kind of like start uncovering those layers, this is why my brand is called Unfold and Rise. You're unfolding all these layers that have been like put on top of you throughout life. Unfold, peel
right,
back those layers of like what people have told you, what the media portrayed for you, like who you've been told to be, and kind of get back to
yeah,
yourself, but with acceptance, without shame, without judgment, and really get to know yourself through these practices such as journaling, sitting with yourself in meditation, um, discovering things like following your joy, following your
hmm
intuition, getting more in tune with what your intuition feels like, what it actually feels like when you're happy with something, what it feels like when your intuition is saying no, and honoring that rather than overriding that and thinking, oh, but someone says I should, like this is what I should be
Yeah.
doing. And once you kind of get back to identifying who you truly are, accepting that and
Mhm.
embracing and loving yourself as that person. And once you've done
Yes.
that, you will attract more of what you're meant to, what's meant to come to you. Like you will attract your, your vibe attracts your tribe. So once you become more confident
Yes.
in that, that's who you are. More people who are on that same vibrational level will come to you. Like more opportunities will come to you that feel more aligned with your values because you know what your core values are. You know what your emotional needs are in a
Mhm.
relationship, so you can identify the correct partner for you. Mm.
Yes. That's a great quote. Your vibe is your tribe. I think
Your vibe
I've never
attracts your
heard that
tribe.
before, but it makes vibe attracts your tribe.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so true. Um, and a lot of people aren't aware of the vibe that they give off, especially if you're not being your authentic self.
Mm.
I think a lot of people find themselves in situations where they have so-called friends and they have people around them that are using them for the wrong reason
Mm.
or vice versa. And I think looking back within yourself and, like you said, unpacking those layers will let you know what vibration you're truly operating at and the kind of people that you want to attract into your life. I think a lot of people don't realize they have that sense of control and that sense of being. They might just think life happens to them and they don't actually, have a say in the people that they bring into their lives. Um, can you speak on kind of um, men being more in tune with what they give off, the message that they give off to women? Because, as you said, we've been conditioned by media, by our families, by our friends to think and to operate a certain way. And a lot of men think they have to be this, this quote unquote bad boy persona or this stoic male or someone that really doesn't care at the end of the day to seem more attractive. Can you kind of speak on that and how that might not necessarily not be true in every case?
Yeah, I think that's, that is very much the case that that's not true. And,
Yeah.
you know, the sort of media outlets that kind of portray that, it's a perpetuating stereotype. And you kind of
Hmm.
have to consider, why is society perpetuating this? I believe that these stereotypes are perpetuated. Men are fed this certain thing because they're kind of driven, like kind of pushed away from being their true selves because they've got to embody this
Hmm.
character, rather than connect to their real selves. Because if men connect to their real selves and actually own their power, that would shift the status quo of the society. And not
Yes.
great for society, is it? We want consumers, we want, productivity, we want sheep, we don't want leaders, you know. But
Yeah.
we really do. But the awakened and conscious people realize this is the system that's operating. So, what women would actually want, I believe, a conscious woman and a high value woman would actually want a man who knows himself, who knows his purpose, his mission in life, who's confident
Mm.
and self assured in knowing who he is and can communicate that without
Right.
fear, you know, um,
Yeah.
who can go for what he wants, but with class and with authenticity and seeking a genuine connection rather than
Yeah.
just seeking surface level stuff. And I think, there are people who can do that from a younger age, but sometimes you get that through life experiences, through certain knockbacks, through certain relationships. And then as you progress through life, you realize this isn't what I want from a partner. This is not what I'm looking for. This
Yeah.
doesn't make for a good relationship. Just having the superficial stuff going on night dates, it kind of, it reaches a certain level and then you're just like, this is boring now. Like, I actually want a really
Yeah.
good intellectual conversation. I really want someone to, like, at the end of the day, all humans want to feel seen and heard and accepted for being
Hmm.
themselves. And how do you find that? You have to be yourself in the first instance. You have to be willing to be a little bit vulnerable to show your real self and see if that person accepts you as you are. This whole thing about
Yeah.
being macho and being a bad boy, you know, a lot of that I think is rooted in wounding. So, like,
Mhm.
a man would put on that mask because it's easier to be tougher, to portray that, like,
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing, you know, um,
Mhm.
when really he doesn't. And if a woman is choosing that kind of person, she's also wounded because why can't she connect with someone
Mhm.
on an emotional level? What is she looking for? What is she seeking if she's choosing a bad boy? In effect, she's actually
Yeah.
choosing someone who's emotionally unavailable. So she's protecting herself
Yes.
because she doesn't want to connect on a deeper emotional level. So, it's not just the man, it's a two-way thing.
Yeah.
Both people have wounding and they're following this pattern because it's easier and safer to just operate on a
Yeah.
superficial level, to chase this superficial like look, and to enjoy the highs and the lows of perhaps that kind of exciting relationship, that bad boy vibe. But really,
Yeah.
they're missing out on emotional connection and deeper levels of vulnerability, deeper connection, because at the end, they might be too scared.
Yeah, I think that's a wall a lot of men run into because they may compare themselves to other men or their friends that are in relationships, and they also want to find that connection, but they may, like you said earlier, your vibe attracts your tribe, and a lot of men are trying to emulate somebody else or trying to put on this front, and that will attract the woman that wants that emotionally unavailable man. And I think it's, yeah, like you said, it's a two-way street. You put on this mask and you become this stone figure, and you will attract people that not only are also emotionally unavailable, but will probably give you gratification for that behavior. And then you now are learning, or you come up with this ideology that this is how I attract other people. This is what I'm supposed to do because I've had success doing this. And then you feel a new sense of fear to try to do anything else. You realize, like, why would I be my authentic self? Why would I show my emotions to
Mm.
somebody else? Because that doesn't work for guys. That doesn't The nice guys don't win. I don't want to be that guy. And I think that vicious cycle of getting confusing that with success, when it's really just you're attracting the person that wants that, versus you could change the vibe you give off and you will attract a new type of person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and totally. Like when you're putting that mask on, you're attracting someone who wants the mask. Who you're attracting someone with that caricature that you've created, rather than attracting someone genuinely for you. So, and then
Hmm.
that does reinforce that image, that thought in your head that like this is what people want because this is how I'm getting, the attention. But at the end of the day, like you won't feel truly fulfilled because you know deep down that you're not being accepted for your true self because they're attracted to this persona that you're giving off rather than your true self. So it's a vicious cycle. Like you're never going to feel
Yeah.
truly satisfied and fulfilled because that's not really you. So that person's not they're not seeing the real you, therefore they can't accept the real you.
Yes.
And in speaking about the
Hmm.
nice guy persona, and like they don't always get the girls. There's a difference between kind of the nice guy and then being a healthy, masculine, nice guy. So, yes, the
Hmm.
nice guys don't get the girls because women like boundaries. You can be a healthy, masculine person who leads well with boundaries. They're still a nice guy, but they have a container. They're able to create a container where the woman feels safe. If the man
Hmm.
is too much of a pushover, too wishy washy, too indecisive, not leading, she won't feel safe. Like it's all subconscious, obviously. Like
Yeah.
she won't innately feel safe because she doesn't feel protected.
Yeah.
There's no container, there's no boundaries to hold her emotional like storms, and like when she because in the feminine's natural state is more flowy, more flow,
Hmm.
more intuition, more feeling, more being, and the man's kind of role, I suppose, the polarity that's important is that the
Yeah.
masculine holds the feminine And in order to do that, he needs to be strong in himself and more kind of, stronger in his boundaries, communicating that. But you can do that in a nice way, you
Mhm.
know. So
Yeah.
yeah, he can be a nice guy, but with boundaries and healthy leadership.
Yeah, I think finding that balance is a struggle for a lot of young men, including myself. I've definitely found myself bouncing back and forth
Mm,
between those two personas. Being that stoic, cold individual that's very emotionally unavailable and uncommunicative. And I've also bounced around in being too much of a pushover, too lenient, not assertive enough, but in just kind of being attract like approaching a relationship more passively and not consciously, just kind of letting things go where they may.
mm,
And finding that balance between the two is, I think, a struggle for a lot of men because me personally, I grew up with a single mother, so she always raised me to be a gentleman, to um, treat women with respect, listen,
mm,
open doors for them, things of that nature. And when you're first entering the dating scene in the outside world, um, especially in my generation, that's met with kind of like, oh, well, that's corny. You're being kind of like, a pushover. You're letting her walk all over you. And then once you come to that realization, you kind of like switch the light off and you're like, okay, well, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to show any emotion and see where that gets me. But they both don't lead to fruitful relationships. So, like, what can men do to kind of be a healthy masculine, but not be overly aggressive or not be overly passive?
mm. Well, I think, let me gather my thoughts. So there's so
Hmm.
much I want to say.
Yeah.
You know, the feminine who says that is in herself wounded and she's been conditioned by society because, there are arguments to say that feminism has gone too far one way and that they now are
Hmm.
so hyper independent, and that's a trauma response from all of the oppression over generations, that
Yes.
they don't see men as safe now because of stuff that's happened generations ago. Like they don't see men as safe, and so they're hyper independent now, and they don't need a man. They don't want a man. You know,
Yeah.
I can pick up the bill, like they take it as an offence, but this is where they need to work on themselves. So the feminine need to
Hmm.
work on being more receptive and open to a man and his advances, not
Yeah.
assuming that every man who talks to them is a creep, not assuming that there's going to
Hmm.
be like a hidden agenda after everything. So it's a balance between like both individuals doing their work. So
Yeah.
there's so I think it's lovely that your mum has raised you to be a gentleman and to open doors and things like
Hmm.
that. And that's actually for a receptive woman, that is what she would like. Like for a receptive and
Okay.
healed woman, conscious high value woman, she would accept that and receive that with gratitude and with
Hmm.
acknowledgement to you, saying like, "Thank you, that was really nice of you." That's a healthy
Yeah.
balance there. So yes, go and approach girls and kind of like tell them your intent, communicate your intent, acknowledge them, acknowledge them deeply. So don't just say things like, "Oh, I like your dress," because that's like complimenting the dress. Whereas if you say
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I really like your sense of style," you have
Yeah.
that's a deeper acknowledgement in terms of like you're addressing a character trait of yours, of theirs. You know, they have
Hmm.
a nice sense of style. So, you know, and just being yourself and owning who you are. So and being strong in that. So leading in terms of like, I'd like to take you out on a date. Would you be up for that? That's a nice
Yeah.
way of asking someone out, you know. And then if she responds in like in a defensive way, then that's not on you. That's on her. If you can say no with
Yeah.
kindness. So a woman, if she's not interested, then she can say like, "Oh, I really appreciate it, but I have a boyfriend already," or
Hmm.
you know, "I'm not looking for a relationship right now," or "I don't feel the connection that I'm looking for," you know.
Yeah.
So having that
Yeah.
leadership, so I'd like to take you out on a date. Would you be up for that? Or like, oh, let me pick up the bill. I'd really like to treat you today. Those are really nice,
Yeah.
healthy, masculine leadership ways of courting a woman and having that dance. Like following up with someone that you really like after a date, not playing mind games and going, oh, I shouldn't text her because I feel too keen, blah, blah, blah. Just be authentic. If you really like someone, just say,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed our date. I'd love to see you again.
Yeah.
That's
For sure.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think men are actually a lot more sensitive than they would like to admit. Um, I think that rejection is something that men very much deeply fear,
Mm,
and not only fear, they personalize. They kind of take it and they like look at themselves like, oh, something's wrong with me because I was not accepted. I think a lot of men fall into that trap of if a girl doesn't like me, there's something wrong with me,
mhm,
or if a girl says no, then I did something wrong. And that's a like you said, that's kind of like a form of a trauma response because it comes from a place of insecurity and not being fully aware of who you are
mm,
and not having that self confidence. Just like if a woman were to look at um, a man with manners as being kind of like too soft, or they look at them in a negative way because they're not uber masculine and aggressive. It's the same with men. I think we uh, attack ourselves because we feel like, oh, if I must be doing something wrong if she did not like me, and then we, as a response, we try to edit ourselves. We try to be somebody we're not in response to that last rejection. And I like how you pointed out how rejection doesn't always mean that it's something with you. It may be something with the other person. And I think men need to look at it through that lens of, okay, it's not a failure. It's just maybe that person's not right for me. Maybe they have other priorities. Maybe she's already in a relationship. Maybe she's just not looking for a relationship.
mm.
Instead of personalizing it and taking that hit on yourself.
Yeah, that's completely right. And I think this is why it's so important to get to know yourself and be comfortable with who you
Hmm.
are, so that
Yeah.
if you have that, that deep self belief, that deep kind of knowing who you are, self assurance, and that self worth at the end of the day, you won't internalize rejection as something wrong with you because you know that you've worked
Hmm.
on yourself. You know that you're okay as a person, you're brilliant as a person, and you'll be the right person for the right person out there. And by the way, there's no such thing as the
Yeah.
one. You choose the one that you're going to be with. And there are many people out there in the world, like over 7 billion people. Um, in
Yeah.
the world. So it's just a case of like you choose who you want to interact with, like who you find the most interesting, who you're curious about finding out more about. That's the person. And if it's mutual, that's great. That can build a great relationship. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, learning not to take things personally, learning that it's not all about you is really important. And maybe, you might have heard the quote, rejection is redirection. So it's just
Hmm.
like redirecting you. So what can you learn from that encounter? Like maybe you
Right.
could have like refined the way you said something, or maybe it's just the other person. Like they're just not that into you, and that's okay. So you don't want
Yeah.
to start off a relationship by trying to convince someone that you're good enough for them. You should know that you're
Right.
good enough in yourself. And if they don't see that, then that's their loss, and you're not meant to be. So
Hmm.
there's someone else out there who's better suited for you, and the person who's better suited for you will be able to see, like pretty much instantly they'll want to get to know you more. They'll see straight away, like I really like this person. I want to get to know them more. So
Yeah.
giving
Yeah.
yourself that grace, and it's actually okay to just like sit with those feelings as well. Like, damn, I'm feeling really rejected right now. Like this feels a bit
Hmm.
shitty. So
Yeah.
and just letting yourself feel that, and like it's a tiny, like a little bit of, depending on how long you've been with this person, or if it's just a one-off. Like, yeah, you're allowed to feel those feelings of rejection and grief. It hurts. You're human.
Yeah.
It's an attack on your ego. At the end of the day, it's your ego that's you know bruised, and you can just work on that and
Yeah.
go, okay, I'm going to pick myself up. It's not me as a person. I like myself. I love the things I do. I love the activities I enjoy. I'm still working on myself emotionally. I've got like my vision and my purpose that I'm working towards. If you're fulfilled in other areas, then that's not going to, the rejection is going to slide off you a bit easier because it's not the be all and end all. But if like you don't have
Yeah.
anything else going on in your life, like, that's going to feel like a bigger thing than it needs to be.
Hmm.
So having that
Yeah.
confidence to, pursue your own goals, your own interests, enjoy your own company more. If you enjoy your solitude and you enjoy your life as it is, those feelings of rejections are just going to bounce off you more because it's not a big deal. It's not the biggest part of your life.
Yeah. I like the point you said about choosing the one instead of there just being a one. Um, Me and a lot of other men have kind of been taught that growing up, and we kind of learned that from movies and,
Mm,
just having that fairy tale mindset of like, there's just, there's somebody out there just waiting for me, and they're designed just for me, and I just have to find that person. And if you don't fit A, B, and C, you're not that person. But I think it's so much more in your hands who that person is than we think. And then we also have to be more open. I think my generations has a certain set of standards that we've inherited, in terms of what we look for in a partner or who we even look for in a friend. I think as men, we we want obviously an attractive partner, but more than that, we kind of want to be, um, what's the right word? Reinforced. We want somebody that, gives us credit for how much of a man we are. We want somebody that acknowledges that. And I think seeking that sort of praise and that sort of reinforcement isn't what men should be necessarily looking for. I think they should be looking for more of a partnership, somebody that's willing to collaborate on an intellectual level, um, more than just somebody that's there to kind of glorify who you are, because we want to show off our relationships a lot of the times. We want
mm,
it to look good from the external. We want people to say, "Oh, well, he got that girl. He's doing good in life. He must have everything figured out." When it's oftentimes never what it seems to be on the external. And what do you believe is, habits of a good, healthy relationship and a good, healthy role that a man should play in it?
so yeah, what you've touched upon there is like external validation. Basically, you're always seeking external validation that like someone to say to you
Yeah,
like, yeah, you're really successful, you're doing it great, you know. And I
yeah,
suppose a bit of ego, like I want someone to be jealous and go, wow, he's got that girl, amazing.
yeah,
That boosts your ego. But
mhm,
you know, really, attraction can build. Like they don't have to be like a 10 out of 10 stunner. That doesn't go
mhm,
very far. You know, there have been relationships that
no,
where like it's just superficial, and then like that can't sustain like a long term relationship just looking good on the outside if you don't have anything to talk about. You know, 7 days a week. Um, so, what does a
yeah,
healthy relationship look like? And in choosing the one. So, it's Esther Perel, actually, one of the
mm,
foremost relationship psychologists in the world, who says, who often emphasizes this. Everyone comes with their own baggage. It's just whose baggage do you want to deal with, and who, as a partner,
yeah,
can you look for that's going to be able to ride these challenges in life with you, and like
mhm,
resolve conflict in a really like healthy manner. So, you know,
yeah,
um, a healthy relationship is one where you're both invested, you're both reciprocating the efforts of the other. You respect each other's mutual respect, there's mutual attraction. I believe a healthy relationship is one where you respect each other as individuals and you support each other to grow. So when you were
yeah,
saying that, as a man, you feel like you need you'd like that support from a woman, that's absolutely the
mhm,
feminine's role in pushing her partner to get to the next level. A healthy relationship is one where
mhm,
they see your potential and they say you can do better than that. Like go for it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think a healthy relationship is one where communication is key, where you're both working
Mhm.
on your own shadows and your own wounding, and you're not projecting it onto the other person. And then if that
Yeah.
happens, then you can both kind of like regulate yourselves emotionally and then come back together and just have really open and uncomfortable conversations. Because even if you have
Yeah.
every other box ticked, like you're both financially stable, you've both got careers, you're both kind of looking for a marriage, if you cannot communicate and emotionally regulate yourselves, there's always going to be problems within the relationship. And
Yeah.
I think it's Lewis Howes who says you need to have values, vision, and lifestyle in common. So you need to share the same
Yeah.
core values. For example, if you're with someone who's a complete nomad at heart and loves traveling the world, whereas you want to like settle down on a farm somewhere, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Because if your core values
Yeah.
are like family, being in nature, and peace, whereas the other person's vibe is like city life, that's not going to work. So you've got to have the same
Mhm.
core values. You've got to have the same vision for life. Like I want to be an entrepreneur who like travels the world. Or if you're both like that, great, that'll work. But
Right.
if your kind of your vision is like settle down with kids and the other person's isn't, that's not going to work. So share values, vision, and lifestyle. Same kind of lifestyle. If your person just like just eats takeaways all the time and watches Netflix, whereas you're like out in the gym 5 days a week and you love kind of like connecting at networking events, that's not going to work either. You know, there's
Mhm.
a balance though, obviously, like each person has their own
Yeah.
interests, but it's about is that compatible? Is that compatible?
Yeah.
And can you communicate with each other and respect each other's differences?
Mhm. Yeah. I think from the female perspective, like let's say for instance, two people are compatible, they have a lot in common, their lifestyles align, they're getting to know each other, they're supporting each other, they're in a relatively healthy relationship, but the woman has been, you know, scarred, or she's found a lack of trust in men overall. And even though she may really like this guy she's interacting with, she still carries kind of these trepidations with her being completely available emotionally to that person. Um, from the female lens, what are some things that men can do to kind of give women that reassurance that they need and lift them up?
Mm. They need to just stay steady, be consistent,
Hmm.
build trust, and validate her experience. She doesn't want to be fixed. She doesn't want
Yeah.
a solution. She doesn't want you to kind of say, have you tried doing this, this, and this? Like sometimes she just needs to be held physically as well as emotionally and
Hmm.
listened to, feel heard, feel seen, feel validated. You know, her experience is her experience, whether that makes sense to you or not. Like even if you're thinking like that happened 10 years ago, why is she still upset? That's
Hmm.
not for you to judge. So being able
Right.
to be non-judgmental, be consistent. It just you got to be consistent over time. That's what builds trust. And every time you have a bit of a conflict or some uncomfortable discussion, being able to resolve that builds another little layer of trust as well. So if something
Yeah.
upsets you and you're able to regulate yourself and say, I just need some space right now, but I will be back, go off and then
Yeah.
stick to your word and come back, that builds another level of trust. Being able to kind of like be honest about how you were both feeling in those moments of conflict, validate each other's experience and say, I'm really like, I didn't intend to make you feel that way. I see that I did. I'm
Hmm.
really sorry. Able to
Yeah.
take accountability for your behaviors, your wounding, your patterns, and you're both responsible for working on yourselves and your wounding, your triggers, and emotionally regulating yourselves, and then communicating that with your partner. So
Hmm.
yeah, healthy relationship, being able to support your partner with her emotional wounding and her traumas, that comes from that consistency in being able to resolve conflict, have the healthy communication,
Hmm.
and just be there for her and validate her experience.
Yeah, I think just having that open communication is very important, and honesty is something that's also super important when it comes to relationships. And I've definitely struggled with honesty, and not just honesty, the degree of honesty um, is something that I've thought a lot about because I just recently did a podcast with a matchmaker, and I asked her how she felt about a certain um, kind of conundrum I've come across in terms of being honest with your partner about your past relationships. Um, I find it very difficult for me to come to a conclusion on what I should do in terms of being honest in terms of like if I meet somebody new and I know that I've been dishonest in my past relationships or I've dealt with infidelity in my past relationships, is that something that I inform them on and let them know that I've stopped those habits and those behaviors and that I'm trying to do inner work as a human being to prevent that from ever happening again? Or I've also come to the conclusion that that is something that I don't even want to burden them with because I feel like I should take responsibility for it and accountability for it, but at the same time not give them that underlying doubt because they're entering something new as well and they want to foster a healthy connection, but they don't want to have that thing to look over their shoulder for. But at the same time, I want to be completely honest with them because I believe honesty is important. So, like, what are your thoughts on how a man should approach being honest about his past situations?
Hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying because you don't want to raise a concern or flag something that's not already there, that's not already in her head.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to draw attention to something if there's no need to. I think
Right.
like there's no need to kind of bear all on your first date or your second date and kind of lay things out on
Yeah.
the table. That's not
Mm-hmm.
appropriate. And also, like, you don't even know yourself. Do I want to be with, like, do I even want to see this person for further,
Right.
longer? You know, so I think it's just addressing it if it comes up organically. If it comes up organically in a
Mm-hmm.
conversation, for example, like you're 6 months in and she kind of mentioned, oh, my partner cheated on me in the past. Like, is that something you've ever done? Sure, that's the time then to address it rather than,
Mm-hmm.
saying, blurting it out on the second date. By the way, these are all the
Yeah.
things, you know.
Yeah.
So if it comes out organically in a conversation and you're having an honest conversation, that's when you can be
Yeah.
vulnerable. And yeah, it's going to be, relationships are going to involve vulnerability if you want it,
Yes.
and honesty. And that's an uncomfortable conversation where, like, worst case scenario is she's not going to accept that. She's going to walk away. But you have to be
It's a
comfortable with
possibility.
that worst case scenario and say, if she heard that truth about myself, despite the fact that I'm doing all I can to work on myself and she walked away, then she's not the one for me.
Mm-hmm.
If she can't accept me for who I am, owning my history and my patterns, and actually I'm working through it, and she can't honor that, then she's not the one for me.
Yeah, I think being ready for that worst case scenario is important. Um, because when I was speaking to the matchmaker, she also noted that being relatively upfront about your needs and wants in the relationship is very important because um, you would rather find out 3 weeks into something if it's not going to pan out rather than 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
You would want to kind of have those insights early. I think a lot of people when they get into something new, they just fall in love with the situation. They it's novel to them. They're in this honeymoon stage of just
Mm-hmm.
everything is amazing and they don't want to ruin that. They don't want to be the person that, kind of messes that up. So it's kind of hard to ask the tough questions early on or even not even ask the tough questions, just be upfront about what you actually want out of the relationship. I think a lot of men um we're trying to figure ourselves out in the process of that. We're kind of um, doing that vicariously through our relationships. Um, Also seeking that validation to try to see where we stand in the hierarchy. I think we kind of base that off of our dating experiences, and we kind of say like, oh well, I've been in several long-term relationships, so I feel confident that I'm doing something right, or versus somebody who can't get into a long-term relationship. Most of their relationships fizzle out over a course of months, and that can really kind of put an impediment on your self-esteem. um, what advice do you give to guys that are in that situation that have not really had long-term fruitful relationships? They've kind of fizzled out early for one reason or another. Maybe it's them or maybe it's the other person, but what advice can you give them to kind of like keep pursuing that even though they have faced, you know, difficulties keeping it going after a certain period of time after that initial period?
Mm. I think a lot of it would be down to, again, being comfortable with your solitude, making sure you've got stuff that fulfills you in
Yeah,
your life, and also maybe
yeah,
reflecting on yourself. It's a great opportunity in between relationships to reflect on yourself and go, what did I learn from that relationship? Why do I keep having short-term relationships? Am I choosing right? You know, is it the type of
yeah,
person that I seem to be attracted to? Are they always emotionally unavailable? If you're the common factor in like these relationships that don't pan out, there must be a reason underlying this. There must be a subconscious reason that you're attracted to these types of people. Maybe consider dating outside of your normal type, you know, consider
hmm,
looking in different places for the type of, for dates. If you're kind of always on the same apps, or always doing the same things, you're going to attract the same people. If you're always going for a
yeah,
certain look of person, you're going to get the same person. For example, I know someone who's, I don't know, they always seem to attract or be attracted to very charismatic, physically attractive people. But then they always have like the
hmm,
same sorts of relationships. So I encourage them to date outside of their type, go for someone that they wouldn't normally go with. Don't just look at the looks,
yeah,
look at someone who you just enjoy having a conversation with. And a long-term
yeah,
relationship will kind of naturally progress. So sometimes it's like just enjoy having fun in the dating process. Be open-minded rather than like,
yeah,
I need to have a long-term relationship. I'm looking for this person because that adds a lot of pressure on you and adds a lot of pressure on the other person. Like, they
right,
can feel your energy. If you're like, I need to find someone, like that can be a little bit off-putting, because they can feel that energy.
yeah,
They're a bit like, why are they so desperate to find someone? Like, are they not comfortable with themselves? Um, have they
yeah,
not got enough going on in their lives? You don't want to be like the main focus of someone else's life. It's a lot of pressure. So yeah, a lot of it's to do with self-reflection and learning from your previous experiences.
yeah. Being a mother and raising young boys, what are some things that you tell them early on, even before they even get into the dating scene, before they even find out that they're attracted to girls? It's a precursor to all of that. What do you kind of instill into them on how to treat people and how to have that sense of self confidence and self worth?
It's a continual process.
Yeah,
Yeah, at the moment they're at that age where like girls do. um,
yeah,
so I think generally just being a good human being, being kind, like always looking at
yeah,
things from the other person's perspective, and if they have like a reflexive reaction to something, I kind of gently challenge them on that. And I'm like, oh,
mhm,
what made you think that? Like, why did you react in that way? Was there a way that you could have reacted better? And also just being really role modeling myself, like
yeah,
healthy behaviors, um, and and encouraging them to be in touch with their emotions as well, so that they see it's
yeah,
okay to be rejected. It's like, they see me go through like at least three breakups, and I haven't like been sobbing for 3 weeks in front of them, but like I have, let them see me cry at times and said, this is grief, this is what it looks like. It's okay for mommy to feel sad, like that's a loss. I'm really sad that it didn't work out. And I'll talk to them about things as well. Like, that relationship didn't work out because that person was too busy, that we didn't find enough time to be with each other. So, what's important in a
mhm,
relationship is that you have mutual respect, you can communicate, you talk about your feelings, you don't hide your feelings. you know.
Yeah.
So
That's super important. That's super important. I think a lot of people don't think that kids pick up on those type of things, and they not only pick up, they do not forget. They would carry the habits and the relationships they saw, and they will model them growing up. And I think it's super important to be that transparent and vulnerable, um, especially in front of your children. Because me personally, growing up, I saw my mom in and out of different relationships, but I always had a certain um, respect and reverence for um, woman because I saw how she, no matter what relationship she was in and out of, she always maintained a certain level of respect and level of responsibility. She never let a relationship kind of like affect the way she took care of me, or she never kind of, you know, slipped in any one area. She was very balanced in her approach to dating, and she took her time with it. She wasn't like in a rush to
mm,
like find a guy to be a father figure for me or anything like that. She kind of allowed things to work out the way they worked out in time, and I think that kind of taught me to like approach relationships in the same way, look at it more from a bird's eye view instead of um, being more reactionary or you know going off of impulses.
mm,
So now I look at things in more of like an overarching process, and I know that things will take time. I have to be patient. I might spend 3 months with an individual, and I still do not know how things are going to turn out. People are very quick to like when they meet someone they like, and things are going good really fast. They kind of like they close the door and lock it. They're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is the direction where I'm going in, and there's no looking back. And that can kind of leave you open to be very hurt later on because you've kind of already decided in your mind on your own that you both mutually have decided that this is what we're going to do forever, and there's no looking back. But it's far too early, and I think I see a lot of people get married very quickly as well. Like they might I think time is relative, and I think everyone should have, you know, the freedom to choose, how quickly they want to get married. It shouldn't be like a time limit or anything, but I think like 8 months, 12 months is kind of far too quickly to truly know a person.
mm,
Um, I've known people for decades, and I'm just now figuring out, who they are, what they really like, um, their mannerisms, what really makes them angry, what what values that they stand on. Like these are things that take years and years and years to learn about a person.
mm,
So like, how important is that patience and being present in the moment and trying to have a great fun time with another individual, but also not committing fully to okay, this is it, this is the end all be all.
mm. Yeah, I mean, if you're in a rush to to commit to someone and to have that label of like marriage, for example, or to have that long-term relationship, I'd question like, why do you need that? Why do you feel the
Yeah.
rush? What are you seeking? What's that void
Hmm.
you're trying to fill within yourself? Like, why are you not comfortable just being where your feet are? You know, and
Yeah.
it's good to have intentions, and I think it's really good to have intentions from the start with that person. Like, if you're just like going with the flow and seeing how things are, state that. If you're looking for a life partner, state that. If you literally
Hmm.
just want situationships and short term things because you're emotionally unavailable, just say that so that everyone knows where they are in the relationship and your cards are on the table. There's no sort of, it's just being transparent. Um, I think I do. Some marriages can work if you have like if you're kind of committed a few weeks or a few months, and they can work. But
Hmm.
I also agree that you don't really truly know a person until you've seen them go
Yeah.
through challenges, until you've seen them when the pressure's on, until you've seen them
Yeah.
like deal with conflict and how do they respond when like shit hits the fan. What do they
Yeah.
do? Because you have to know that you can grow as a person with them. If you're going to make it like all the way to the end, you have to know that they're going to be okay with like taking care of your aging parent with you. um, you know,
Yeah.
or if you suddenly get diagnosed with cancer or something, like how are they going to be? And if you don't know that, if like 6 months into the honeymoon period, you would have just had like really nice dates and you're just enjoying that honeymoon high and the excitement, sure, enjoy that, but that's not reality. That's not
Right.
day to day life yet, you know. So
Yeah.
it's about kind of when you notice that your mind is kind of doing that spiral and that storytelling, and you're starting to tell this story to yourself. It's about like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, that would be nice, but let's focus on where I am right now. Where are we right now? This is all I've
Yeah.
seen of this person. I've seen them in happy times and good times and having fun. Let's wait until we see them when they've got like a really like big pressure on at work. Let's see them when
Yeah.
I bring up something that's triggering me within our relationship. How do they then deal with that? How do they deal with that feeling of being wrong or doing something
Yeah.
like misstepping in the relationship? How do they react and cope with them being in the wrong? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, if you notice that you're kind of building this story in your head, that's great that you have that
Yeah.
awareness. Therefore, bring yourself back into the present and kind of like tick off like what's the evidence that you have right now? What do you
Hmm.
actually know right now? What's fiction and what's fact? And then kind of
Yeah.
being able to communicate that. It's okay to even communicate that and just say like, oh my gosh, we're like four months in, and I'm like, I'm kind of like my brain and obviously a lot of hormones have a lot to play in this as well. You can kind of say,
Yeah.
my body for some reason really wants to have your baby, but I know this is a primal thing, you know.
Hmm.
Don't freak out, and then just see how they respond to that. You know,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. We are human beings, and we have to sometimes look back at ourselves and realize like we have instincts, but we also have a logical mind, and we need to be honest about both of them and let it be known. I think a lot of men are kind of on the fence about having, or just not even having children, but being honest about it. I think men want to have their fun in their 20s. They don't want to be burdened with having a child.
Mm,
But I think that's also a generalization. I think there's a lot of men that look forward to being fathers. And I know in this country, um, there's like a narrative that a lot of men are not seeking to be a father, and a lot of women have trepidations on
mm,
having children with men, even if their relationship works out very well, their trepidation to take that next step because they don't know if that man will be there. They don't know if that man will, you know, be supportive financially of the child. So, can you kind of speak on from a woman's perspective, what you look for in terms of how you can gauge, well, if somebody does not have kids, um, how good of a parent they will be, even though you have no idea. Like, what are some signs that you look for to say, like, okay, this is a good trait that would transfer into being a good father, or this is a good habit that I think would be good in parenthood.
mm. I think you kind of, at the end of the day, it's about them being a good human being, isn't it?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
are they kind? Are they respectful? Are they communicative? All of those are great traits for being a parent. Are they willing to grow? Are they willing to address their own issues? Because I tell you
Yeah.
what, when you have children, they force you to reparent yourself. You know, relationships are
Yeah.
great triggers, and so are children. So if they're
Yeah.
able to own their stuff and work through it, then that's a great indication that they'd be a good parent as well. And also it's okay if like you don't want kids right now. Some people don't want
Hmm.
kids ever, and that's okay. It's just about
Yeah.
finding that partner who understands that and who's happy with that as well. And yeah, maybe
Hmm.
you're kind of like at that age where maybe you'll have kids in future, but it's not something you want right now. That's okay. You know,
Yeah.
someday you will mature into kind of wanting kids, and you'll know when that time is, when you feel more ready for it. There's no kind of right
Hmm.
or wrong. I think society gives us that impression like you need to be married by your late 20s, you need to have kids by your mid 30s, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
things are changing. Like things are always changing, and just because it's right for someone else
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's right for you. So as long as
Right.
you know what you want, you can communicate that with your person, your partner, or your potential partner, then you're kind of you can be on the same page. Because if you're feeling like you don't want kids for another 10 years, but they're looking at like, I want kids next year, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So you might as well be honest about it and not waste anyone else's time.
Yeah. Definitely being open to what you want is important because it can you can get a lot of mistakes out of the way early. A lot of wasted time can be saved just being open and honest and
Mm.
having that open communication with who you're dealing with. Uh, what are your opinions on online dating versus going out there and to the world and finding someone? Because I think a lot of men, I mean, we can use the excuse of like we're just in a new technological age and this is just how things are done now. But I think a lot of men use it as kind of like a crutch because they're afraid and they don't want to cold approach a woman. And I think,
Mm.
well, maybe I'm being creepy, or that person just doesn't want to talk to me, or they kind of use online dating as kind of like a tool to avoid that that fear of approaching.
Mm. Absolutely. And it's so much easier to be kind of rejected, I suppose, on an app because they're not like a real person yet. You know,
Yeah,
and you've also got like a whole queue of other people available. So you're like, oh, next. But the thing is that
yeah,
that encourages that disposable um, attitude to people. But we can't shop for a
hmm,
relationship like we shop for like handbags. You know,
yeah,
it's not like going on Amazon and saying like, I want a nice pen today. You know,
right,
there are still people behind that. You have to kind of see. I mean, I don't like dislike online apps, and I think that's just something we have to accept because everything is on an app these days. Everything is online.
yeah,
It's just
right,
about making sure that you don't invest everything into that, and that see it as
hmm,
a tool, as you said. It's just a tool. It's like the first step, maybe in like opening up a conversation with someone. But I would take it offline as soon as you can, really, or at least have a phone call or a
hmm,
video call because talking through text, like you can only gauge so much, and text you kind of infer things. Whereas if you talk to someone,
yeah,
you get to know their mannerisms, their tone of voice, you can kind of feel their
hmm,
energy, especially in
yeah,
person. So it's just far more efficient to meet someone in person. And also that points to that leadership as well, that masculine, healthy leadership. Like have a few texts of like over 24 hours or 48 hours, bit of conversation here and there. If you want to get to know them more, just say. Um, I'm really enjoying talking with you, but I don't want to text buddy. I'd really like to meet you in person. Are you up for like a burger, like next week?
yeah,
You know, and then then you can feel someone's energy. Then you can see if you actually vibe with them because there's only so much connection you can do over like through text on words on a screen. So yes, use it as a tool,
yeah,
but also make sure that you're meeting people in other ways. And I think if you're connected with yourself, you know what brings you joy, what activities bring you joy. For example, you love playing squash every week, or like you like really love going to the gym. Like talk to the people around you when you're doing these activities, because if they're doing the same thing, then it's likely that they'll be into the same things as you. They might be on the same wavelength. You know, if you go to certain like music events, then they're going to be into the same thing. So obviously, you've already got that connection point. You're not just starting off from like photos and like a couple of words on a screen. There's a lot more you can build on that.
yeah,
So I think it's just a combination of different modalities in meeting people is a healthy thing.
definitely. Having that diversity is super important because you can really gauge somebody. You never know what somebody means when they type something to you. You kind of think like, oh, well, I don't know how they're saying it.
Yeah.
So you kind of that face to face interaction is super important. Going back to what you had said earlier about the loneliness and the suicide rates of men, if you had to condense all the things you've learned and all your insights into one quote or one sentence to tell men how to combat loneliness and how to look within, what would you tell them?
Oh, that's a tough one. I suppose, like, give yourself the grace to connect with yourself, you
Mhm.
know, honor your authenticity, and you know, as again, the strongest man in the room is the one who can be vulnerable and communicate their vulnerability. That's what a healthy
Mhm.
masculine person is. You know, they
Yeah.
know themselves, they're comfortable with themselves, and they can communicate
Yeah.
their vulnerabilities and their boundaries with kindness and compassion.
Yeah. That's another great point. Communicating it, but not also being communicating it, but communicating it with kindness and not, you know, dumping on somebody, just letting them know like this is my standards, this is what's happened to me. You must do A, B, and C, or it's never gonna work. You know, being kind about letting them know like these are the things that have happened to me. This is what I uh envision a relationship looking like for me,
Mhm.
and saying that in a way that leaves room for the other person to respond, not just dumping your baggage on another person and expecting them to have a calm response to your very visceral and upfront forward
Mhm.
response. I think kindness is the key word. um, it's something that I truly live by. Is kind of kindness and being a lot of things. A lot of the time it's not what we say, it's how we say it. And so I think you open the ability to say a lot more to somebody and be a lot more, give a lot more context if you say things in a kind way versus, just an aggressive, assertive, in your face, kind of like suffocating way.
Yeah. Don't let your wounds and your triggers impact someone else. Like, take accountability for what's your stuff and be kind to
Hmm.
yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That, that kindness is super important. And a lot of guys are kind of like, well, this is who I am. This is what I stand on. This is the principles I am, and I'm gonna say it any way I want to. And if she doesn't accept that, then be gone. Like good riddance. Like this, I'm just a naturally aggressive person, and a lot of people kind of carry that with them and personify that. Like I am just a naturally loud, aggressive person, and they're unwilling to not compromise, but they're unwilling to just change that. Unwilling to say maybe this isn't the right way to talk to somebody. You know what I mean?
Well, everyone's on their own journey, and like, all you can do is control yourself. And if you see other people like that,
Yeah,
they've obviously got their work to do. Underneath aggression and
yeah,
anger is sadness or fear at the end of the day. So why are
hmm
they being
yeah,
aggressive and angry? It's because they fear not being accepted, or they're sad because of some rejection that happened in the past and they haven't processed that. But that's, you can't judge someone else for their journey, and if they're not aware of that, there's not
hmm
really much you can do. But as long as you take responsibility for what's your journey and your stuff, and concentrate on yourself, and like, if everyone does that, then we'll change the world like a little bit at a time.
yes, I believe so as well. Um, Dr. Suli, you've been great. You've given so many insights I think a lot of men can take from and apply to their day to day lives and uh, look at it from not only the men that tell them how to do it, but you, like yourself, women that have a perspective and an opinion on how men should operate and what true masculinity really looks like. I think the work that you're doing is very good and informative, and we need that female voice in terms of where we should go because a lot of men are lost, and we can talk to ourselves about it, but we're cutting off half the population if we do that. So I think what you're doing is very important, and I thank you for giving me your time and being a guest on my podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed the conversation. If anyone wants any further information, then you can just follow me at Unfold and Rise
Hmm.
on Instagram. That's where I usually hang
Hmm.
out. So thank you for your time.
Cool. Thank you so much, everybody. Please go check her out. Stay informed, and I wish you the best new year, and wish you good luck in all your endeavors.
I'm talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living.
Bottom line, there were no weapons of mass destruction.
Totally unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq. I mean, of Ukraine.
A new
in our time,
Most people still want to run for book.
peace in all time.